With the conclusion of the final chapter of Gundam Battle Operation Code Fairy, it's been asked of me and now it's time to deliver. This is my review of Mobile Suit Gundam, Gundam Battle Operation Code Fairy. For your consideration, this will be, for the most part, spoiler-free, with exception to some outlying details regarding the timeline this game takes place in. If you haven't checked out my initial impressions of Code Fairy, I'll include a link to the related videos in the description below. With that said, let's get into it. Gundam Battle Operation Code Fairy is the latest Gundam-based single-player game taking place in the franchise's main timeline, the Universal Century. While it shares aspects with its multiplayer-based brother in terms of graphics, controls, and some of the underlying foundations in its gameplay, it separates itself out with a fully voiced-out cast of characters with a mixture of animated cutscenes and graphical interactions. While the focus of the story will shift in its side and extra missions, you play the role of Ensign Alma Sterner, Noisy Fairy's mobile suit squad leader and main protagonist of the game. With fellow Noisy Fairy squad mates Helena Hagel and Mia Brinkman, players will navigate through various historical encounters happening alongside events of the original Mobile Suit Gundam series. Hopping straight in, I was surprised with the approach to the storytelling of Code Fairy. BB Studios made a call to handle the character interactions in a couple of ways. Part of that character interaction was done and treated as if the player were watching an animated series, in addition to instances where 3D model characters were also utilized. By doing so, this gave the game a much more of a JRPG feel versus an action game. Sadly, the 3D portions are only utilized for Noisy Fairy characters, as none of the other characters introduced have much other than animated dialogue and some sequences added to them. Additionally, for those who have a preference to English dubbing, won't find an option here. In terms of gameplay, Code Fairy certainly caters to players who are new and unfamiliar with the mechanics found in GBO2, or Gundam Battle Operation 2. Some of the campaign missions introduce to you some of the inputs and mechanics found in its PvP-based sibling. For veterans of GBO2, however, it's a slightly older build in relation to custom mobile suit parts, but still a familiar place indeed with the controls and the game's rock, paper, scissors system. With the missions that our Noisy Fairy members interact with, I overall had a lot of fun with those encounters, as it definitely required more than a few tries to clear it. Since some of the missions required plenty of attempts to S-rank them, giving players the opportunity to skip dialogue or engage in which half of the encounter needed the rank up was a welcome sight. This is mostly in part due to Masahiko Tokushima of BB Studios, who is credited for directing Mobile Suit Gundam side stories, both Blue Destiny and Rise from the Ashes scenarios. If it is to be believed, he's also credited for directing games like Journey to Jaburo and Encounters in Space, both Gundam-based scenario games for the PlayStation 2. Which demonstrates how some of the encounters in Code Fairy have an old school feel. Despite the good vibes, the AI for the main part of the game is definitely a mixed bag. While it seemed to be decently good in terms of performance and with large groups, the AI definitely wasn't as consistent as I would have liked, especially as the AI in Code Fairy's simulator missions are an exact copy of the training mode found in Gundam Battle Operation 2. Teammates are also fairly inconsistent on their own, as I occasionally found him being shot in the back for going too ham on an enemy or an objective. Mobile Suit Gundam Battle Operation Code Fairy has a lot of aspects of the classic old school based Gundam games, with the flair and technology of the present. However, there are some blemishes that somewhat hold the game back from being better. For instance, some of the antagonists that you encounter with the main campaign are mostly unnamed pilots, with only 3 being named and having something that resembles a background story. A missed opportunity for additional lore for the Federation side in this conflict, and during this time Code Fairy takes place in. Additionally, while Code Fairy is intended to be grim as Mobile Suit Gundam is supposed to be, I can't honestly say that I felt that it was. Granted, it doesn't have to be obnoxiously presented to players that war is brutal and bad, but it definitely felt like there were missed opportunities there. Overall, despite it all, I certainly enjoyed my time with Mobile Suit Gundam Battle Operation Code Fairy, and look forward to some of the other Gundam side stories that we know of, and we have yet to discover. If you enjoyed this video, please don't hesitate to hit that like button, subscribe for more, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.